Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Okay, I have a mystery to share. I know you have a mystery to share.
Ooh, we have a mystery off.
Get ready. It's going to be like one of those classic whodunit mysteries.
Uh-huh.
So recently I went into a sensory deprivation tank.
Yep.
Where I wore my swimming trunks in, and I had forgot them in the back seat of my truck.
Yes.
And the salt inside of them had
From the tank.
from the tank. Yeah.
There was so much salt in it because
That they were like rock hard. I was like, I don't
you
know.
could like knock on
Ding,
them.
ding, ding, ding.
Yes.
Right. And so,
They were no longer fabric.
yeah, I was like, I don't even know what to do with these. So I was like, I'm just going to throw them in the pool. So I tossed them in the pool, and I'm like, maybe the pool will like get the salt out. Probably could have put them in the washer, but this felt like a good idea. So anyways, I do that, and I come back and I fish them out with the pool thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, look, they're looking good. It's going to get good. And then I throw them back into the pool.
Okay.
So I was like, maybe I should just let them like marinate in there.
You fish them out, you throw them back in.
Totally.
Okay.
And then
There's a lot of logic in this story.
I have a friend over to smoke a couple cigars, and I decided to go hang out in the pool with him later that evening. Just a couple hours later, he comes over, or even an hour later. It wasn't even that long. And we have our conversation. And as we're leaving, I look in the pool and I see my shorts floating in the corner of the pool.
Yeah.
That's it. That's that simple. Go to bed, get up, and I think, I should go get those shorts out of the pool. I go to get the shorts out of the pool. The shorts are not there. Now, here's the thing. I'm not making this stuff up because I literally got on all my like outdoor cameras.
Your Ring cameras.
And I watched all of these events take place. I watched me contemplate, wow, there's some salt out of that, and I think that's going to be okay. I'll throw them back in the pool. Like, I'm watching it happen. And the only potential culprit that even came in the middle of the night once was a cat. And I did not see the cat take them. And so I am like, where did they go? I know. I looked with my eyes. These two eyes scan that entire pool. They're not there.
I know. And I don't know. I don't have any help for you.
I'm just fascinated.
Well, if we find them, we will follow up and let our guests know the mystery was solved.
You know what? Maybe it's just a sign I need some new shorts.
The universe has spoken. They're like, these shorts are disgusting. Get new ones.
Yeah. That's my mystery. It's an unsolved mystery.
Oh.
For those of you who are old enough to know what that was.
Oh, unsolved mysteries. My mystery is not as entertaining.
Okay, then we probably don't care about it. Let's start the episode.
I woke up this week and my foot itched. So I scratched it. That's like a normal thing. And I thought maybe it needs lotion. And I had just recently been like, I should lotion my feet more. Like that feels like a good way to take care of yourself. So I put lotion on, and then it burned. So then I was like, maybe I should put like Neosporin on. Like maybe it's like cracked.
Yeah, just keep sticking stuff on it. Who knows?
And then my foot just swelled up and got really red.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, long story short, it became a rash. It is a rash, and it is on one of my feet. And I went to the doctor, and they're like, you must have come into contact with something you're allergic to on that one foot. And I'm trying to think, what
happened?
What would one foot get allergic to?
Yeah. Where's this one foot hanging out at that I don't know about?
What is it doing?
Where has it been?
Yeah.
Is it going somewhere in the middle of the night? Is it moonlighting with Justin shorts? Like, what is it doing?
Unsolved mysteries.
Yeah, unsolved mysteries. My goodness. Yes. So if anyone has any ways to solve those mysteries, we'd love to hear from you. Today, we have a fun topic. I like the topic that we're going to talk about today.
Me too. I really do.
We're going to have a conversation about reparenting.
Yeah, and a lot of you are going to be like, what does that even mean? That sounds like a pop psychology term. But
now, if you imagine in this, like, it's Justin putting on a diaper and then Abby treating him like a parent. It's not that.
Oh, that'd be horrible.
But that would be hysterical because it's been done by people.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically, me and you had childhoods.
That's true statement. We had childhoods.
and there were some missing pieces in our childhoods to our developmental stages. There were some things that we missed in our development as we were growing.
Which is something that's so relatable to so many people. We're all just...
And most people aren't aware of it and haven't put a name to it and understand it. So they actually just feel shame that they're behind in life, or that they don't know what they're doing, or that they should be in a different place. And they haven't actually learned why they don't know what they don't know. And so we're going to talk about that. The things that we missed as kids, you can get as an adult. And that's what I love about reparenting. Reparenting is the idea that we actually, as adults, now have the power to go back and help the places in us that got stuck as little kids when we missed out things that we needed. We can actually go back and help our little kids that are stuck in our childhoods get the things they need so that they can grow up into be an integrated adult with us.
Yeah, I want to say this. I think this will help make a lot of sense to people who are maybe trying to logic through this even at the onset of this conversation. So I'll hear people be like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Sometimes I just feel like a little kid. And they're like, I'm a grown adult. I don't know why I act so, like, I'm emotionally fragile over here. Why is this coming up?
Or like, I'm so overwhelmed by this thing and it doesn't make sense. Why am I so overwhelmed by it? Or why can't I face this one thing?
Hence a conversation we started out with regarding mysteries. You have a mystery that you can't solve.
Yep.
And there's a good reason for it. There is something, and there are solutions to the things that are why you're acting the way that you do. One of the things that we talk about inside of our Life Consulting Masterclass is that if you understand your story, you actually will make sense. Everyone makes sense if you get deep enough in the story. And it's not just, are we left just making sense, or can we actually make repair as well? So part of it is oh, bless you.
Excuse me.
Take my blessing. If I'm willing to seek out understanding and making sense out of my story, then I can make the repairs. So that's part of this conversation. And so when we look at the idea of reparenting and we talk about the little kids inside of us, this is like, hey, there are historic moments of development that actually require certain expressions of love, care, consistency, nurturing, skill, things like that. And when we don't get it, it doesn't mean necessarily that those in authority are villains. It just means maybe they didn't have certain capacities, right?
Or maybe no one gave it to them and they didn't know how to pass it on.
Yep. And so when we look at it, we can feel as though we're walking with a limp. Like, okay, I am now broken the rest of my life. I don't know what else to do about this. I always have this feeling inside of me. Or we can go, oh, that's something that is requiring attention now. And I can, through practical experiences and internal emotional experiences, I can create a repair for this past process and get myself all growing up inside, where I feel like, no, every part of me feels like an adult now, because the adult part of me actually took over and made amends.
Yeah, I think it's, if you struggle with shame a lot of times, or feeling inadequate, or feeling like you're behind and everyone else knows more than you, or like there's something wrong with you, that you're always failing, a lot of that is people don't recognize, oh, that's my little kid feels that way. There's a part of me that actually did miss what they needed. And so there is a part of me that is behind. And I remember, like, we'll start giving some practical examples. One of the books that I love on this is John Bradshaw's Homecoming. It's a great audio book that people can listen to. We take people through that in our school. There's a lot of different things that we do. But one of the things is skills. Like, maybe you just miss some skills, so you feel inadequate in them as you grow older. So I know for me, when we met, cleaning my room felt just horrible.
Oh yeah, you'd go into meltdown city over the idea of simple basic cleaning.
Yes. Cleaning the kitchen, cleaning my room, packing packing my room, packing my suitcase for a trip. All of those things felt completely overwhelming to me. Now, what we didn't know at that time is that I have learning disabilities and ADHD, and both of those things made it really hard for my brain. And my mom, bless her, she saw how hard it was for my brain. Like, she saw that it was really overwhelming for me. Instead of figuring out how can I break this down to help her, she's like, I'll just do it for you.
Right.
Which it was like kind in her own way, but it meant that I lacked having skills growing up. No one taught me how do I do these things. I just get overwhelmed by my room, and so my mom would clean it. I'd get overwhelmed by the kitchen, so my mom would clean it. And so I grew up, and there's a real feeling when parents don't empower you and train you how to overcome something, you feel inadequate. You feel less than. You feel like you don't have what it takes. Every time we avoid something because it's too hard, it starts to speak to us that you're right. You are too little. You are too fragile. You can't handle this. And so avoiding things debilitates us.
Yes.
And so I had to learn in the journey of reparenting, I had to start being like a practical thing was learning life skills that I hadn't learned as a kid. And I had to have the humility. And this is the thing. If we can actually have the humility to say, I didn't learn this as a kid, and I need to learn this, and I'm going to give myself time to learn this. I'm going to give myself like space. I'm not stupid for not knowing what I don't know. Mm-hmm. A lot of us just beat ourselves up forever for what we don't know, instead of being like, there's a reason I don't know this. What if I had compassion even that I don't know this? Oh, of course I don't know how to clean a room. And of course I don't know how to keep the kitchen clean. And now I can do something about that. So reparenting for me looked like actually having people step into my story and start to help me learn. I had a friend, the first person I started with, she'd come into my room when it was messy. I was in my 20s. And she would sit there and she would just say, pick up all the dirty clothes. And I'd start picking up the clothes. And then because my brain is crazy, I would like get distracted by something. And she just yelled, no, only pick up the dirty clothes. And she was trying to teach me how to sequence, like do one task at a time. Because before I would clean it, I'd start picking up clothes, and then I'd see a dish and I'd take it to the kitchen. And then I'd be like, I should put some dishes away. And then I'd be like, oh, this thing needs to go to the living room. And I would
stop. No, I have to interrupt this. Because literally you could go through our house and you'd be like, in this room, all the cabinets are left open. There's something, part of this is finished over here. And you could almost, if you investigate enough, you could be like, oh, then she did take the dish to the kitchen. And then she noticed that she had something to take care of in the living room. So she started work over here. And
it's actually just messier everywhere. And then I'm so defeated that I've just made a mess everywhere. And I feel like I've been working for hours and nothing's clean. And then I just give up.
Yeah.
And so I had to have somebody, and literally she just sat there, bless her heart. It's so awesome that she did that. She'd be like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. Not yet. Not that. Oh, you want to make a stack that will go to the kitchen all at once later. Put the dish by the door. No, go back, find all the other dishes that need to go to the kitchen. Put them by the door. And she just started breaking it down. When I got married to you, I had to have the humility to be like, I don't know how to clean the kitchen. And I mean, like, that takes a lot of ego strength to acknowledge our weaknesses to our partners, especially because you were mad that I couldn't clean when we got married.
Yeah, it was confusing to me. And I didn't put it in context of this isn't a life skill. Mm-hmm. I put it in the context of like, you don't care. Mm-hmm. This person's being lazy. Like literally just take your dish and put it in the dishwasher instead of creating a stack that's a mountain high.
Yes.
Like it wasn't calculating to me that like that process wasn't there.
Yeah. So I had to actually have you be in the kitchen, like, and I would say, I feel so overwhelmed. Our house became a hoarder house as I grew up. And so I could clean the kitchen, besides the fact that I didn't know how to stick with one task, but I could clean for hours and it would still not be clean because there was just so much that needed to be done. And so I would look in the kitchen and I'd feel so overwhelmed. I'd be completely locked up and shut down by it. So then I would have to say, how long do you think it would take you to clean this? And you'd be like, 10 minutes. And I'd be like, what? This seems like 3 hours worth of work. And then I'd have to have you tell me, what do I start with? And then I'd have to, and we'd have to do it. And so one of the things that I learned, maybe it's finances. Maybe you never learned how to budget. A lot of people never learned how to budget in their families. Or maybe you never learned how to get car insurance or do your taxes. Or maybe you never learned how to have secure attachments. Maybe you never learned how to, there's so many skills that we beat ourselves up for not knowing because we think we should just innately know them instead of seeing most of life as a skill that we need to be taught.
Yeah.
And we can reteach ourselves things and we can have grace and we can pull people in to help us learn.
That's one of the things that I want to address. You talked about the aspect of humility, humbling yourself. And one thing that a lot of people aren't willing to do is ask other people for help. And that's something that you've been really good at doing, is being like, hey, can you come help me with this?
Help me understand
how to do this
for me.
Right. But help me understand and walk me through this process. And that's something that, that engagement of inviting someone, they're now entering into a parental role for a moment to engage and impart something to you. So, and it's one of the things, the aspects that's really necessary to feel the depth of impact on this isn't just practically acquiring the new skill, but it's also experiencing the emotional aspect, right? Of, oh my gosh, I didn't get this. And that's not a disparaging statement, but I needed this and now I'm going to receive it. This is so cool. And I'm letting myself feel it, not only in the adult moment, but I'm letting it go down to my history and leave an impact of now I get it.
And you're talking about consciously taking the experience of having someone help you and giving it to that little kid. So thinking through, oh, my little kid who didn't know this, I'm now visualizing Justin with me in my room and I'm overwhelmed. And instead of my mom just doing it for me, I'm imagining Justin sitting in there with me, teaching me so that my little kid can feel like she's not stunted and she's not broken.
Yeah. Which I want to, can I add my own experience, tangible experience at this point? I've shared this story before. This is just a funny story. But I was out swimming at Whiskeytown Lake with my friend Caleb. And Caleb was like, let's go swim all the way out to that point. And I was like, I know, I'm good. He was like, what? Do you not know how to swim well? And I was like, no, that is not, I don't know how to. Yeah. He's like, well, just swim on your back. Well, you can take it
just
slow.
Float on your back.
Just float on your back out there. No. He was like, oh, you don't know how to float on your back. And I was like, no. So I was like, I was never taught that. And he was like, oh, well, I'll teach you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm not quite sure what it means he's going to teach me. I'm like, I think he's going to talk me through this situation. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Caleb puts his arms out like this. And I'm like, the F does he want? He's like, you just get in my arms. In my late 20s.
Yeah, it's funny.
I'm standing here in the water and there's a beach full of teenagers. And I'm thinking, this feels odd. If I climb into his arms right now, a couple hundred teenagers are all just going to watch me be held by him. And I had this thought. I was like, I can avoid this right now and I can miss out on something that I didn't get.
Yeah.
Which is the willingness for someone to begin to participate in teaching me, seeing that there was a need instead of telling me to figure it out. Oh, you can figure it out. Just try. Just go try. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But being like, let me extend my arms to you and actually walk you through this. So I climb up as a giant man baby into his arms and I'm laying there and I'm like, I release any sense of what's on the beach. And I allow myself to be present. Part of it was I got very present with these experiences. When these experiences are happening, they can pass by us.
Yeah.
We're not with them. But I let myself get in a tangible moment of reparenting. And I'm like, man, I didn't get this as a kid. And it wasn't, I didn't get this as a kid. It was like, I didn't get this.
I'm going
Okay,
to receive this
I'm going to
now.
receive this now. And as Caleb's holding me, he was like, look, we can take as much time as you need.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a thread of conversation. Just that singular word of statement and action was, oh, there wasn't as much time as I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's saying he's willing to get that. And I can feel the reality of that. And I'm in that moment imagining myself as like an 8 to 10-year-old in Caleb's arms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm here. I'm getting to be parented. I'm getting to be fathered by this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend the next like 15, 20 minutes of me hanging out in his arms as he's telling me how to breathe. And now try this. And he's gentle and he's kind. And I'm embracing each emotional expression as it's happening. And now I've developed this new skill as I'm doing this. And I've had an experience that is tangible, not just to an adult, but the kid part of me. And I remember walking away feeling this thing inside of me that it was impacted in the way of like, oh, there is gentle patience available for me. And now I have it in my childhood.
Yeah.
Like, cause my memory, it went beyond the now, it went into the memory. And
All
I
the way
feel
back to your
like
history.
I actually feel like I have a memory of Caleb holding me as a little boy in it.
Cute.
Even though it didn't happen in my
Right.
past, it happened in my present. But those past moments of just kind of like sink or swim, kid.
Totally. Literally.
feel replaced,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. I think that's such a beautiful story. I wanted to also bring up, because we've used several stories of having other people help us learn skills, which is a really important thing. But there's also where I have taught myself new skills that I didn't necessarily get. So I'm going to share about one, and then maybe you can share about G.I. Joe's. Oh, well, you have another one. Okay. For me, attachment, I learned about attachment from my family. I didn't necessarily learn about healthy attachment.
Totally.
And so I would say this is a journey that I've been on for the past few years, is actually having to study attachment and then learn what healthy attachment looks like. I have to see it. So oftentimes in learning, we need to see it modeled. So I need to see other people securely attach. And what does that look like? So I've had to read books and then start to notice it on TV shows and movies, in real life people that I've met, and be like, okay, that's what secure attachment looks like. And then reading the books where you're like, oh, this is what I do when these are ways, these are actual habits to do to create better attachment. And then also working on, I'm going to emotionally work on the places that I'm stuck in counseling to be able to move through the places I'm stuck. So it's like deciding, I think, instead of feeling like I'm broken in attachment and I'll always be that way and I'll always have to carry that scarlet letter and I'll just have broken relationships forever, instead of believing that, which so many of us start to identify ourselves with what we were missing from childhood or what we were taught wrong from childhood, instead of just saying, oh, this means in my lifetime, I get to learn this. It's my life journey here. And in the beginning, there was places where I'd be angry or feel unjust. Like, well, why do I have to learn all these things that other normal people just got, And now I've fully given that up because I think we're put on earth to learn things. And so I'm like, other people who naturally learned secure attachment in their family, they're here to learn something else. There's something else that they're on the planet to figure out and enjoy. I am here, and part of my journey will be to learn secure attachment. And part of my journey will be to learn how to make a bed. And part of my journey, and like just giving myself room. And it's amazing what will happen, if you will slowly take bite-sized pieces out of learning new skills. Because I'm 40 now and I have so many skills that I thought would be impossible for me, but it's because I learned a little skill at a little time. And I just gave myself permission to keep growing at my own pace, and permission to be like, if it takes my whole life to learn some of the skills that came natural to certain people, that's okay.
Yeah.
I have as much time as I need to get what I didn't get. I have as much time as I need to repair what was lost, to recover what I was missing.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about learning, which specifically one of the weird, excuse me. You're talking about learning, and specifically one of the weird lies that I believed is that I don't know how to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I thought maybe there's just something broken in me, because oftentimes I was given things. It was like,
go figure this out.
Right. There was some semblance of like quick teaching. I'm like, I don't get what's happening. Like, you got it. You can figure it out. And I'm like, but I can't. I've never, I don't know this stuff.
I think this is very common for kids because our brains aren't developed enough. Like an adult can go read instructions, look up on YouTube. We didn't have YouTube as kids, but you can find a way to learn it. But as kids, our brains aren't fully developed. So when somebody tells you to do something you don't know how to do, sometimes that's actually too much for the developmental stage you're at. And so if you didn't have a parent that would walk you through that and help you, you could end up with that lie of just believing I'm stupid.
Totally. So I had this sense of I'm a bit stupid inside of this. And I've shared this before on the podcast as far as like the idea that I'm a nerdy little G.I. Joe action figure collector. And I remember as I began the journey of action figure collecting, I felt like there was an invitation to do a couple things. And one was to engage my childlike wonder, a part of myself that I had buried, and go on this journey of collecting. But as I was collecting, I allowed that part of myself to get excited enough where I was fascinated about other action figure characters. And I was like, oh, I wish they'd make this character, that character. And then I was like, well, I wish I knew how to make them myself.
Yep.
And I started seeing people who did custom action figures, which was them creating the action figures that looked like they were professionally produced. And I was like, man, I wish I knew how to do that. And then I was like, well, what if I do that?
Yeah.
And I began the process of going, you know what? I bet these customizers, I bet they would love to share their information on how they do it because they're passionate about it. And it probably, in a good way, they feel important when they get to share their information.
Absolutely.
Like, I've worked hard for this. I'd love to share it with somebody
who cares,
who would celebrate this with me, because my wife doesn't care.
Yeah, totally.
If they had wives, I don't know. But, you know, I began to ask those questions. And then I began to I can teach myself how to use this paintbrush. I can teach myself, because I especially felt like I was broken as well when it came to using my hands.
Yeah.
Like, these hands cannot create. My dad's hands could, my grandfather's hands could, but my hands can't. I could visually create. I went to film school. I could tell people how to set something up in a shot, but it was entirely different from creating with my hands. And so in my determination to learn how to create with my hands, I began a process that was as childlike as creating action figures. And I became very good at it.
Yeah.
Very skilled at it, to where I was in the top 10% of customizers. Of oh no, this is a solid piece and I've won some awards from some of the online nerd groups, right? But what that did, a couple things, was I reparented myself by being patient. I did behavior patterns that were I'm going to be patient with this process. I'm going to give myself as much time as I need. I'm not going to get frustrated if I make our friend Rachel, she says, make a first shitty pancake, which is the idea of you try and you know it's going to be like that garbage pancake, when it gets dumped out.
You might need to add a little more water. You might need to add a little more flour.
And I actually was I can make a lot of these not well. And that's okay until they evolve into being something that I feel really proud of.
Yeah.
Right. And in doing so, that evolved in me getting into woodworking and getting into building. And then I renovate my house and I'm like, oh my gosh, all these crazy adult skills evolved. And now I have this thing that's been encoded inside of me. I'm a really good learner and I can teach myself anything through partnership of asking questions and investigating and troubleshooting.
Taking the time that you need.
Absolutely.
And being gentle. And you learned, like, I may learn different than my dad and his grandpa. I may think different than them. And I think so many times we compare ourselves to people. That's what happened to me. I compared myself with people that it came natural to. And so I was like, I just don't have that thing. I just can't do the same things that other people can do. Instead of being like, I can, it might just take me a different pathway to do it. It might take me a little extra time. But when you replaced your I can't with I can, it empowered your whole life. There was something inside of you that felt like weak and inadequate. And when you were able to say, I'm going to face that part of me and I'm going to challenge it and I'm going to learn new skills, I'm going to grow. Then when you actually, when you looked at an obstacle, you faced it and overcame it, that victory of overcoming had a ripple effect into your whole life where all of a sudden you felt like I can take on my life. I can conquer things.
Yeah. And it's cool because one of the things that was redefined in my reparenting is it's okay to make a million first shitty pancakes is the idea, the concept. And that bled into my woodworking and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, didn't do that well. What did I learn?
Yeah.
What did I learn? And Grace became an intimate friend as an adult where I'm like, oh, I'm good friends with Grace. I understand how to give myself grace now and patience.
Yeah.
Right? Going back to, I practically began to behave in a very patient manner towards everything.
Well, and this leads, so the first thing of reparenting that I think is so important that we just talked about is like learning practical skills, which is just looking at what is it that you don't know? What if you didn't hate yourself for not knowing it? What if you didn't blame yourself for not knowing it? What if you actually had compassion for why you didn't get it?
Yes.
And then what if you decided, I'm going to take as long as I need and get as many resources as I need to learn how to do the thing that I want?
Yes.
It's liberating and it's transforming. But another part of reparenting is learning how to change your own inner voice. And you kind of were talking a little bit about your inner voice during those projects even had to change. But the idea that most of us hear our parents in our head over and over and over again, and we actually treat ourselves the way that they treated us. So if our parent was always angry at us, we're angry at ourselves a lot. Or if our parent was always criticizing us, we are always criticizing. If our parent always wanted something done more perfect,
if they lack compassion,
then we're going to say it needs to be more perfect. Or if they lack compassion for us, then we're not going to have compassion on why we're struggling or what's going on. And so a lot of the ways we treat ourselves mirror habits that we learned in our childhood.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I got very deliberate about was like, I hear this inner dialogue or monologuing at myself. And I really don't like the inner monologue that's taking place. And like you said, I realized this is coming from different authority figures. Sometimes it's coaches that we've had in our lives. It's teachers that were around us. It's the parents, it's grandparents, it's older siblings, it's whatever. It's other people's voices. And I said, what is the voice that I want to have towards me? If I wanted to be a really good parent
to yourself,
to myself,
yes,
what would be the conversations I would be having in all of these areas of finance, relationships, spirituality, all of it? I'm like, what could a really good parent look like? Which, as a side note, this conversation provokes the question, what is healthy, whole parenting? And, you know, if we don't have models of it, we don't know. And there's not really a book written on this is the ultimate parent, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all humans and we're all messy. I think that for me, as I began to figure out how to process with a different voice towards myself, I actually investigated what the nature of God looked like. Like the nature of Jesus. I sat and I thought, how was he responding to disciples and to the environment around him? And I was like thinking about this concept of what love is defined by 1 Corinthians 13. And I started going, I want to know how to operate in that manner towards myself. And so I found myself, you know, hundreds of times in a day catching myself and being like, that does not sound like something that would have came out of Jesus's mouth or that would have been an interaction that God would be having.
With me.
And I was like, I want to know how you feel about me, about these circumstances. And there was an inner spiritual journey for me that maybe some people don't want to go on that walk. But for me, there was a spiritual journey that I was on that coincided with, okay, now this is how I'm going to begin to address me internally in regards to every circumstance that's happening currently and the circumstances that I visit historically, because those two parts were so necessary. It was this inner voice about my current circumstances was just as necessary as how do I look at my history? I realized that when I looked at my history, I had such seething, self-hating judgment.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, why did I do that? I was so stupid for that. It was foolish that I did that. I'm a terrible person for doing that.
Yeah.
And I started going, if I'm going to reparent this, it's going to be me sitting down with my history and being what a good parent would have been in all these historical moments where I was deeply messy, where I was destructive, and being able to reflect, this is how I feel about you now, Justin.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is probably the talk I got most famous for, was my journey of learning how to love myself. And I shared a lot about it because I just saw like a visualization of, is the way that I'm talking to myself a way that I would talk to someone else? And so a lot of times, like if I would be like, I'll use you, like pretend you're the person, my inner dialogue would be like, you're so stupid. I can't believe you just said that. Everybody's looking at you thinking how dumb you are. You're never going to be loved. Everyone's going to see how screwed up you are. You're never going to, I just berated myself for years. And that inner voice, exactly what you're talking about, like what would a dream parent sound like in our heads? That's okay that you made that mistake. You're learning. Of course, you're still growing. I'm so proud of you for recognizing learning this thing from this trial that you went through. I'm so proud of you for making it through this, for not giving up. Wow, you're still trying. That's beautiful. You've got this. I believe in you. You're so worthy of compassion. I see how hard this is for you. And it's awesome that you haven't given up. Like, that voice of a parent that is patient, that is kind, that is understanding, that has empathy, and that is cheering you on. Like that's the kind of voice that we want to have. And so a lot of times reparenting ourselves looks like taking your parents out of it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. He's like projecting, he's saying his voice and projecting it, and they're all like, ooh. And that's almost what we do with our parents' voices in our heads, is we project them into our life and we follow them and we continue. And so many of us had childhoods that were really painful, and we continue the pain long after they're no longer our caregivers. Like long after we're out of the house and we're free from whatever hardship we went through, we continue carrying it forward because their voices stay in our head. And I remember so many clients telling me I would never talk to someone else the way that I talk to myself, but it's fine for me to talk to myself like that way. They're like, no, I would never do this to anyone else, just me. And the idea of reparenting is, no, I'm going to decide that the way I talk to myself needs to line up with a healthy parent, not line up with my inner critic, my abuse, my shame, my blame, my anger, my punishment. Like how many of us punish ourselves because we learned that form of relationship when we were growing up? Oh, when I do something wrong, mom and dad get angry and they punish me. So now when I do something wrong, I punish myself as an adult. We just carry their parenting on as the legacy through our lives. And the beautiful thing about us is that we have the power to transform our lives. We do not have to treat ourselves the way that we grew up being treated. We do not have to get stuck with those voices in our head. We get to choose from here on out how we want to live.
Yeah, it's so good. One of the things that I want to add to as we're talking about that inner voice work is now we're kind of like moving into that inner space conversation. And there is something about practically reparenting ourselves within our memories that is a vital part of the process to reparenting, right? So, for instance, we find that we have these memories that they happened, they contain pain, and though we can't go back to them, like actually go back in a time machine in history and visit them, we can visit them as an adults.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting because people have asked me, what's the point of going back there? Because even if you do interact with yourself in a new way in that memory, you're just making up an imagination, right? And I'll kind of like break this down a little bit further. But a lot of times this idea is that this memory is still living today, even though it was done years ago. It's living through the way that we have these intense feelings of abandonment and loss and loneliness and despair and emotions that aren't even real to the current circumstances are being relived from our past.
And not only that, it's actually living in our bodies. Now that they have so much science coming out, the body keeps the score. The memory of abandonment is stored in our tissues. The memory of rejection, our body actually carries the energy of that pain unless we release it.
So I'll give an example. There was, as a child, there was a lot of me going to my bedroom to cry. My bedroom was downstairs in the basement, is in a corner room. And that's where I would process pain, but I didn't necessarily have anyone processing the pain with me. So there was a sense of abandonment. When painful things happen, I have to do this all alone, and I'm going to feel alone in the pain, and I'm not going to get taken care of. So there was an aspect where I lacked a nurturing conversation. I lacked a compassionate conversation. So I remember going into these memories as an adult, seeing myself as a grown adult, walking into my childhood bedroom, sitting down on the side of the bed with little Justin as he's crying. Actual memories that I remember, like, oh yeah, I was crying because this event happened. And I would sit there and say, Justin, your pain matters to me. I want to be with you inside of this. It makes sense to me that this was really hard and really scary. And I want you to know that I'm sitting here with you. And what I felt was a sense of an infusion of a historic moment that I had, an infusion of love going into that historic moment. And though it didn't happen in my actual past, I now had brought it into my past and I had delivered this thing that I needed. Because there's this idea that when a painful moment happens or a moment of need happens and we don't get that need met, we will feel it looping inside of us, waiting to get resolution, right? And that's why we'll try to find resolution by like, maybe if I win enough girls' hearts, then I'll feel fulfilled. I'll feel like this connection that I was missing.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I can actually go into a place that's missing this nurturing experience, this experience of care and understanding. And then I can actually resolve it. And so I had moments, hundreds of moments that highlighted over the course of a decade where I was like, oh, that's a moment that still hasn't been visited with the nature of nurture, kindness, care, and understanding. And I'm going to go have those dialogues and I'm going to walk out those actions. Like I literally started visiting childhood moments where I'm like, oh, here's where Justin is being bullied. I'm going to stand up as an adult in this memory to the bully who's bullying him.
Right.
And I could feel it, like something in my soul was like, oh, I've been fought for now. I'm not little anymore. I don't feel like I'm just getting bullied. And I watched as I evolved into a sense of safety and security and strength and nurture and compassion. Like I could feel it filled into my being. And now I don't have the intensity of those emotions anymore because there's not a memory that I'm aware of that I haven't visited to this point.
Well, and the interesting thing is, even just on a body level, they've said that they've done studies where they've had athletes visualize doing like a race or whatever, and they'll actually test their muscles. Their muscles will fire, the same muscles that fire when they're doing that part of the race. Like our visualization really does impact us.
Yeah.
And so our ability to visualize love back in our history and to learn to turn towards us. I think one of the things I've learned the most is I learned to jump out of my body, to distance myself. Like, again, if you imagine like that I'm in a relationship with myself and I'm constantly like stiff arming you and looking the other direction, then you're going to feel really hurt and wounded. And so I need to learn to turn towards you and actually love you. And that idea of like, can I treat myself like a good parent would? And so for me, I remember the first time this ever happened, I was in worship and I was having a hard time feeling connected to anything that was happening. And I had this vision flash it was like something stupid I had done earlier. I'd been in a meeting and I felt like I talked too much. It wasn't even that big of a deal, but I used to have such high stakes shame about everything. Any flaw I made, I was such a perfectionist.
You couldn't even say the word right.
Irony of me correcting myself on how to say perfectionist. But I was such a perfectionist that I would beat myself up for like, you talk too much. They probably thought you were too dominant. They probably thought you're too stupid. Whatever it is. I was imagining all of what they could be judging me negatively, which is a horrible way to live. I tell people, if you're going to live in a made up world, because I was living in a made up world, I was imagining that they thought this bad thing about me and this bad thing about me and this bad thing about me. And I'm like, I came to the point in my life where I was like, if I'm going to live in a made up world, I might as well live in a good made up world. Like, I'd rather just visualize that it's not reality either way, but why would I choose a horrible reality to make up that people think about me? But so I was feeling all this shame, and I felt like that feeling of wanting to push away from her, like wanting to crawl out of my own skin, feeling ashamed of almost being associated with myself in that moment. And I felt this invitation from God that instead of pushing away, to go back and tell her that I loved her and hug her and say that I was proud that she was mine. Like, I love you. It's okay if you overtalk sometimes. Who knows if you did? Like, maybe you're just being self-conscious. Maybe no one even noticed. We really don't know. But like, I needed to make amends with me. That was a part of me reparenting myself, saying, no, I'm going to come close and I'm going to tell you that you're worthy of love when you talk too much and when you don't, when you're perfect and when you're not. And for me, it's that going back. And so there's been childhood memories that I go back to, and I have to forgive myself because I've been holding a part of my younger self hostage with my anger and frustration. If you would have done this differently, your whole life would have turned out. Or if you would have done this pain wouldn't have happened. And actually going back to create reconciliation and repair, like in AA, in the 12 steps, one of the steps is to go make amends with people that you've hurt. And I'm like, a part of reparenting is me making amends with me for the way that I talk to myself, for allowing myself to make mistakes. Like, a healthy parent would be like, I see that you made a mistake and I still love you. Mm-hmm. Like, I see that you made a choice that caused you pain and I want you to know I still love you. I'm going to be with you while you have to go through the pain of that. Yeah. I'm not going to abandon you. And you're going to know that I love you. You're not going to just feel my shame and punishment the whole time you're working through this. You're going to actually feel that I want to be with you. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of reparenting for me has been that, going back to moments in our childhood. I know there's a famous person that we worked with, a famous client that we had, and you did a session with them where they felt so, I think this is true. Either way, the story's real. They did a session. They're famous. They've been in movies. They were at the height of their career when the session happened. And they went back to a memory of them in high school and feeling so alone at a football game where they just felt like nobody cared about them. They didn't fit in and they didn't belong. And so going back into that memory, was this you or was this me or was this... You helped lead this? Okay, great. I just didn't want to ruin the story. So you went back into that moment in the high school stadium and you brought in all of his friends and all of the people who love him now and helped him visualize himself feeling like he belonged. And this is the crazy thing. It doesn't matter what our current life circumstances are proving to us. If our kid is stuck in that middle school being bullied, they can't feel how loved and worthy they are. If they're stuck in feeling like they're on the outside, not fitting in, even if they're on the inside of all these things circumstantially in their life, there's still that part of them that feels unworthy. And this is why we get to, as adults, actually take worth and bring it back to our childhood, actually take belonging and bring it back to our childhood, actually take repair and bring it back to our childhood.
That's so good. That's so good. I know that we've talked a lot about the reparenting process here today. And one of the things that I want people to walk away with is I want them to take time and ask themselves a question. One of the things we highlighted is, what would a really great parent be like?
What would they sound like? Mm-hmm. How would they be patient with me?
And that might be something that you're like, I don't know where to find that. And one of the ways that we can find that, I talked about the aspect of connecting to God. Maybe that's not a safe place for you. That doesn't make sense to you. One of the other places that's really good is to observe other people that have been like, oh, that grandparent feels like the perfect parent, or that coach feels like the perfect parent, or
that TV show character showed me something about parenting.
Yep. That you were drawn to. And when you see yourself drawn to an aspect of parenting, it may not be the whole thing, but it could be like, that aspect of parenting I feel drawn to. I want you to make note of that. And I want you to begin to build like, okay, that for me is what would be a beautiful expression of a parent, until you can build a more fuller expression of what maybe healthy parenting or whole parenting would look like. And I want you to begin to ask yourself, what's one way that I could begin to apply this parenting technique towards myself? Something that I didn't get, but I really needed. How can I do that practically and internally? And I think that would be a really great piece of homework.
And some of you are listening and you're like, this is radical. Learning how to treat yourself different, learning how to heal. The hope of getting to actually be kind to yourself and compassionate and get what you didn't get, like that feels so hopeful to you. I would think about doing our life consulting masterclass, the year-long. It is a year of being reparented, because you have actually people, me and Justin and all of the leaders that we have in our school have actually gone before you, can train you and teach you in exactly the steps to take in order to care for your heart, in order to take care of yourself, in order to heal, in order to learn how to emotionally regulate, all of the things that you need to do. You can actually be reparented emotionally through the year-long school. It's an intensive, it's a part-time school, but it will transform your life. And so if you're interested in that, you can email support@Stumval, STUM as in Mary, V as in Victory, OLL, consulting.com. I love that you're lipping it with me. That's so funny. Or you can go to justinandabby.com under the courses, and there's information there, but you can also reach out to our team.
Yeah, you'll see a box where you can write in and just put LCMC inquiry. Anything else? Okay. I have one final thing to talk to our audience about. I'm looking at you and I'm telling you this. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube right there, and then hit the bell button so you're notified.
You know who wouldn't do that? Me, because I don't like being yelled at. So in case you just felt all of the triggers from your childhood come up on this really great, gentle reparenting podcast, maybe hear like a nice mom be like, if you want to, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Come on. But I did have somebody message in and she was like, I just caught The Connected Life for the first time on YouTube. And she's like, what I didn't expect is how fun it was to see the emotion, to actually see when feelings come up, when you guys are joking, like to see the interaction. She was like, it was an experience. I'm so glad you guys are filming. I'm going to start watching it from here on out. So check us out on YouTube and subscribe if you want.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, Anyways, it's been fun, guys. Love having y'all, and we'll see you soon.